Mike's on. Call to order the March 28th, 2023 regular city council meeting. Liz, will you do roll call, please?
Councilman Nichols,
Here.
Councilman Havorka,
Here.
Councilman Jackson,
Here.
Councilman Duran,
Here.
Councilman James,
Here.
Councilman Kleinschnitz,
Where is he? Here. Councilman Kleinstich did advise, I believe, in the previous meeting that he was not going to be here. I think he's on one of the rims of the Grand Canyon. I don't remember if it's the north or the south. I would entertain a motion to excuse or unexcuse his absence.
I would make a motion to excuse the absence of Councilman Kleinschnitz.
Second.
Motion to excuse by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Havorka. Any further discussion?
Nay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Is an excused absence. Item number 1, consent agenda. Entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilman Havorka, seconded by Councilman Duran. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. On to number 2, approval of the agenda. In a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman James, seconded by Councilman Havorka. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. No presentations. City manager reports. Peter. Hi. No, you're good. Yes, we moved fast. We're on to 4.
We're burning through, Peter.
Well, good evening, council, and I'll try to keep this brief. If you have any questions on the report that I forwarded, please feel free to pose those comments. And wanted to start off with, we had a meeting this morning with Dana Levac. He's our regional manager.
I've even got my hearing aids in, and your back is to me, so I'm hearing.
Okay. Anyway, I'll speak up to the microphone. Can you hear me now? Okay.
I can even hear you now.
All right, okay. I do that for a reason. Anyway, Dana Levac showed up this morning. We went through several grants that we currently have open. We also talked about some of the future projects that we're looking at. We talked a little bit about a Tier 3 grant, which we have never applied for, which provides greater, actually it's unlimited grant fund. I'm sure there's a limit, but they don't have a cap on that particular grant fund for large projects. For instance, game changer kind of projects like repurposing the plant for other energy sources, that sort of thing. And it was an interesting conversation, but it requires city and county working together to pursue a grant like that. And of course, we are working on some feasibilities for repurposing the plant for different energy sources, but that's through several different entities at this point. We also, last week, we interviewed facilitators that had applied for that position through the Colorado Department of Labor and funded through Just Transition. And the facilitators primarily will be looking at objectives to help Moffat County and Craig, of course, transition our economy, but also looking at large projects like repurposing the plant. Those are key concerns, and we came up with a couple of good candidates. I think we have a selection. I can't announce that just yet until we get through the background screens and that sort of thing for these two entities. But I think we have a really good candidate that has worked with coal-impacted communities for some time. So I think that's a positive. I was going to just look at a few of the bills here that showed up this past couple of weeks, and I was going to ask Marlon if he would mind giving us a recap on Senate Bill 213, which is the land use bill that you have in front of you. And that could have some potential impact on the city of Craig, or probably will at some level. So, Marlon, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, so we haven't dug into this too deep, but essentially the state's looking at, separating the state into urban areas, resort towns. We would be considered a non-urban town, so the restrictions wouldn't apply as stringent to us. However, they have they're within urban areas are basically, for the most part, eliminating single-family zoning. And so there's some things there. They're requiring any zone must accept ADUs, which is accessory dwelling units, which we basically do anyhow, except it's a conditional use under our residential low-density zone. So that would apply to even rural communities like ourselves. But there's a lot of intricacies to this that we'll have to see if they get it rolled out, what that might mean. It definitely would be a game changer for any kind of resort community or urban area, Denver, that sort of thing. From what I found, they do have a list of communities that fall under each one of those categories, because today when we were speaking with a gentleman from the state, he was making sure that a bedroom community to a resort town wouldn't have to follow under some of those same things, which, you know what I mean, if depending on how wide of a net they threw, could possibly mean the city of Craig. But as of right now, they have us as a non-urban area, so there still could be a couple of things that could potentially change our zoning to some degree, but not as much as Steamboat, Vale Aspen, and then metropolitan, larger urban areas. So anyhow, just something to kind of, we'll keep our eyes on and see how that falls, just because it's kind of sets a pretty big precedence also when you're telling communities they can't, enforce a lot of their zoning. Even requiring parking and other things, there's quite a bit to it that would make things considerably denser when it comes to zoning. So we're gonna kind of keep our thumb on it and make sure what comes down the pike there, just in case there's anything we have to change a little or think about a little when developers do come to try to do something. It gives them a lot more leeway in the city, especially larger cities. Not a lot of recourse to say no to certain things. You can still set requirements for aesthetics and other type of requirements on them, but there's some things that you basically have to allow use as a use by right, regardless of what your current zoning says. So just something we're kind of keeping our eyes on so that we can, there's needs assessments and stuff that larger communities and resort towns have to do. So it would basically every 5 years you would be submitting a needs assessment to the state, and they would be overseeing that and seeing what you're doing to meet those needs. So definitely be a upheaval if you're in downtown Denver or something like that. But we'll see how much that looks like it'll affect us also.
It looks like they finally got the bill language up. I just finally found it. Because the last time I saw the update on this, they didn't have the actual bill up. But it looks like it's posted.
For 213?
Yeah, and it's all, just cruising through it, it is all brand new language. It's not necessarily revisions to prior code. It looks like it's of new provisions under Title 29. It's all brand new.
And it's 150 pages long if you want to
Yep.
review that and go through it. And like Marlon says, sometimes some apply, but most do. Some of it's quite ridiculous. You can build multifamily buildings, doesn't specify the size, specify no parking. So you get 20 to 50 cars on the street. Where do you put them?
Is that only going to be in urban areas though?
Nope.
Or is that one
Parking
that applies?
requirement, I think, was on all multifamily.
And this hasn't passed yet.
Yeah, it hadn't, but it
They're
needs a
still
lot
pretending
of,
to discuss it.
a lot of discussion on this bill because it takes away local control. You know, you have very little say what you want your community to look like.
Some of it has to do with placing stuff near transit and everything, which in Denver is obviously a,
And
you
resort.
know what I mean, a different
Yeah.
deal, and possibly in resort towns, but, yeah, and so there's a lot to it that could definitely be manipulated, and so we'll see if they loosen any of those, or stick with it, or if, you know what I mean, and
How
see
do we
what.
push back reasonably?
Against the government?
Comments, get a hold of your representatives, your senators, and,
That
Right now, it's in committee,
doesn't help.
so
yeah.
if you know.
Well,
I
this,
wish it did, but
this bill is Governor Polis's bill.
Yeah, I got.
He's the main, supporter of this, or he started a committee, and they put together this bill, and he's backing it, so.
it's really good if
gonna
you
be hard to
own
beat.
single-family housing in urban areas. Those are going to skyrocket in value because of this.
It even does some things, as at least the generic language we have so far removes limits on how many unrelated people you can have live, you know, in a single family home and that sort of thing, you know, most.
I'm not about telling people what they want to do if it's a choice. I don't really have a problem with that, but
So to answer your question, Dylan Roberts sits on the local government, and he's also our senator. So that's who I'd reach out to.
Yep.
He sits on local government and housing, so he'd be the person to hang out.
He has been responsive.
Yep, very
Yeah.
responsive.
okay.
So,
Okay, ready to move on here?
Yes.
I thought another bill that actually has some positive connotations, and that bill was sponsored by our local representatives, Lukens and Dylan Roberts were two of the sponsors out of the four. And that's HB 231247. And that bill looks at assessing advanced energy solutions for rural Colorado, which includes nuclear, geothermal, several different hydrogen, that sort of thing. I think that the bill requires that the Colorado Energy Office Director conduct a couple of studies here to determine the feasibility of these energy sources, and we can only hope that they do that legitimately and give those the consideration they deserve to help with a potential repurposing of those the plants that they're looking at closing and that sort of thing. And I honestly think they should have passed a bill that said if you're going to close a plant, you have to replace the megawatts with a reasonable and equitable energy source. But that didn't happen, of course, and obviously political. But the other two bills that you have in front of you, those did make it through the initial vote. I think they're still trying to rectify a couple of these the firearms bills, 168 and 170, between the House and the Senate, and then that's probably going to go to the governor at some point here pretty soon, I would assume, unless somebody has some different information on that. But that's just a few of some of the not-so-good bills and one that might be beneficial.
Good news is the assault weapon ban, total ban, both of the introductory lawmakers have pulled their names from them, from the bill, so that's kind of floundering, and that may be one that they're sacrificing to get, 168, 169, 170 through, so. My only comment on that is the attitude's changing, and I own guns, and I support lawfully owning guns, but we need to get to the table and have discussions. Right now, everybody says no to everything about guns, the supporters, gun owners. We have to be at the table because, right now we're getting things crammed down our throats completely that we don't like whatsoever, and we're not even at the table. So I would recommend that we at least get to the table and have a say. Because you can see those three they're going to pass. There's no doubt in it. But there was very little discussion on them.
Yeah, 1230 is still stuck in committee. It's been there since
Yeah.
the 3rd.
Well, and which one of these still, it enacts the wait period even for victims. Which one was that?
That's what, 169?
The one in between the two that we've got here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even victims of domestic violence, they want a 3-day waiting period for them to buy firearms. And I can't think of a group of people that needs more. So, cool.
Thank you, Peter. You got half of my
Yeah,
report.
thanks for the legislative update.
Anyway,
On a good foot.
Super good tone for the night.
the only other thing that I wanted to mention tonight was one of the projects we talked with the regional manager about was the collection. We have a 15-inch collection line that's causing some problems because it doesn't have much grade or slope on it. And that line is located about from Murdoch's on the same side to Findlay. And that line impedes growth on the western end of our community. Like the RV park, we had some issues with Maverick and the RV park, adding that to the collection system because of the inadequacy of that line. And so I think we're going to be studying that, but I think that's going to be a future project and possibly a 24 project. We'll be working with the engineer to come up with, reasonable plans and engineering for that and look at grant funding probably the second or third round. July 1st is the next energy impact round. They'll be up to $1 million. The project's estimated to be $1.5 million at this point. And we're also in the process of that devolution of the frontage road that hasn't closed quite yet. So we'd like to kind of get through that before we cut into it. And I hope we don't have to mess that up too much if that turns out to be a priority project for us. So anyway, that's all I had for tonight.
Thanks, sir. Any questions for Peter?
When do we get notification on the larger housing grant?
That is a great question. I wish we had that right now because we could use that information.
But they haven't given it much
They-
of a time frame or
we-
all the applications been submitted and
We said just based on some information a few weeks ago, that it's probably going to be towards the end of April before we have that notification. I wish it was sooner because it's holding up some other decisions here until we have that information. Yeah,
That wasn't through DOLO, that was through,
Department of Housing. Yeah. That's a $5 million request.
and that was IHOP?
IHOP was the first one. That was a study grant. That's a $106,000 grant that we were awarded. Then we had the IHOI grant, which is the $1.5 million that we just got awarded for the horizontal improvements. And we're waiting for notification on the transformational housing grant. Yeah, that's $5 million.
and the 1.5 has to be spent 2023.
That's right. Yep.
From April to September building, so.
And we have an RFQ out right now. That closes on April 7th. We have a couple of really good, experienced contractors that are looking to bid on it. And we have several local that I hope will see some interest in that solicitation.
Any other questions for Peter? Move on to council reports. Mr. Nichols.
Well, thank Peter for covering part of my, good news, he covered part of my report, so won't be quite as long. But one bill he didn't cover is House Bill 1101, which is, it's sponsored, I don't have the legislator, but Winters, Representative Winters sponsored the bill. But it was to restructure the transportation planning regions across the state. And currently, right now, the regions are set up more so on miles, road miles, and they wanted to change it to population-based regions. So it would put the focus on the metro areas, more so cut the funding, because there's only so much funding to go around if it's based on population, the rural areas would receive less for our roads, even though we have more road miles, to cover. So that has initially was set up that way. They really, based on the negative comments they got from the regions and the other legislators, they backed off and put that down to a study. So right now, they're going to study if they're going to divide the regions across the country.
Chris, I'd just like to mention that we did send letters out email letters, notes to Senator Chris Hansen, who potentially will be the future mayor of Denver. He was here last summer. We got to meet him, spend some time hoping to appeal to his good nature on that bill. And we also sent a note to Junie Joseph. She's a representative out of Boulder. She was also here last summer, and we got to spend some time with her. So we have some inroads in some of the candidates that might have some influence on that bill. We also sent letters to Lukens, Representative Lukens, and Senator Roberts as well.
'Cause they were up here with GOCO, weren't they?
I'm sorry?
Weren't they up here with GOCO?
I thought they were here for, they had the internship. It was an internship program. They brought a bunch of people up with Senator Bob Rankin. Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's just kind of an example. If they get overwhelming feedback, they'll potentially, depending on what the issue is, they'll readdress it. So that's a success at this point. I attended a meeting, I'm not going to go into depth on it because I'm sure Derek will, but the Joint Chamber City EDC meeting. What I will discuss about this, it was great to see two community groups now, or entities, working together. And I think we had several topics during that meeting that the Chamber and the EDAC committee, City EDAC, want to take on jointly and work together on. And been my experience in Craig, and when something you don't like, we form a new group instead of working with existing groups. Now you have two groups trying to go out and find funding and manpower to do the same thing. So it's very encouraging. A couple other issues, Boys and Girls Club. I just attended a all day in Steamboat doing the strategic planning for the plan for growth of the club and where the club will be in 3 to 5 years down the road. And it's not really a council thing other than the city owns the building for the Craig Club and we're in, and we do share on some major costs, on maintenance of the building, but they're financially strong, and talk about expansion where we want to be 5 years down the road. Big issue for the fire district. Marlon was involved. We've had some roof issues, roof trusses that since 1950 have shown some use and abuse. And we've had some engineers up there, so we're going to end up, if you see a lot of construction going on in the old part of the station, they have to take out the trusses, redo the whole roof system. So I don't know what that cost will be, but it's going to be quite major. Last thing I have is talk about some of the programs we've been introducing from the URA to, how they help some of our businesses. The Bad Alibi Distillery, work is happening. It is progressing. They are remodeling the building at this point. The still has been ordered. Project probably wouldn't have come together if we didn't have the LMD, talk about funding, work with funding, and then the URA working with them to provide future funding down the road. So it is happening, and the creamery will stay in the building for now, even after remodel. So it's, that's one of the projects that's happening. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Haworka.
No meetings. I have submitted my resignation to council. Tonight will be my last meeting. I've accepted a position on the Front Range. So thoroughly enjoyed my time here in Craig. Boo. Paul, if you want to abolish any departments, you'll have to get me a replacement.
Do we get a going away party?
I imagine Paul and I will end up somewhere tonight.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jackson.
I went to the CNCC board, and they will have some new seats coming up this election year. I think 2 of them coming up. Their CMC is officially moving forward. I think in April they were saying on the feasibility study. Then we have another big thing is they will be changing their scholarship program to where it was like fully funded for Moffett County residents to now 50%. I think will be next year is one thing they wanted me to mention. Then we have went to listen in on school district yesterday. It's pretty exciting, but superintendent's trying to make a few changes and got some people excited. But if you want any information, contact them.
Well played. Well played. Mr. Duran.
You want to put your phone number up?
Yeah, last week, I attended the planning and zoning meeting, and just for the record, I will be abstaining from 7C and 8C due to a possible conflict of interest, but I believe my duty as being the liaison to planning and zoning, I want to just give a quick summary of it. Obviously, the main topic was the storage shed development, potentially over on Mac Lane. It was a 90-minute meeting, quite a bit of discussion for opposition and, for it by Kurt Weiss and opposition by some of the neighbors. I thought the committee had a good conversation. To be honest with you, I thought the attitude coming into the meeting was they were against it. By the end of the night, as you saw in the minutes, they recommended to council to approve it on some conditions. Those conditions were a detention pond be constructed on the southwest corner of the property to deal with drainage and to eliminate any potential drainage going into Birch Street. We've already had that conversation. Include a landscape buffer and a fence on the south side of the property, which would separate the property owners. And then on the north wall of the storage units, which would be the come and go side, visible from Victor Way, there must be, a really nice facade. So the commission, there was only 3 present, 2 were gone. Who knows what would have happened if it was a full commission at that point, but just want to let you guys know that they had a well-thought conversation, and other than that, we'll probably have a pretty good conversation about it coming up. As Chris mentioned, we had an EDAC meeting. The first part of that meeting was just the EDAC alone. Shannon presented the 2023 economic development goals. I'll read through those real quick. These were brought from the group 2 meetings ago, and this is what they came up with for 2023. First one, and not in any specific order, but first one was create and develop and enhance an entrepreneurial atmosphere at MCHS and CNCC. An example of this would be they want to start a student business plan program. Chris Jones, who is head of that committee, has already spoke with the school district and the business teachers up there, and very good feedback. Potentially want to roll that out in 2024, and it would be a business program where they learn how to do business plans, learn profit loss statements, learn balance sheets, and then they have a competition, and the winners of those potentially get scholarships. That's how it would be funded. So, trying to get the youth thinking, and we need that up there. Goal number 2, effectively market and promote the Cura through educational pieces and informative sessions to the public in order to increase awareness and generate projects to each of the Cura areas. Discussion on that is obviously council passed that, but I think a lot of the business owners in these zones, even though they got letters, still don't know what it is and how to utilize it. So just communicate that better. Distinguish actions and results to secure funds and support the ED department in the future. Obviously, the budget for 2023 is fairly small. How do we grow that and ensure that this department's here down the road? Work in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce with business retention and recruitment. Chris mentioned we had a great meeting with them at the second part of this meeting, where we kind of went back with our goals. LMD representatives were there, as well as, who else did we have? Was that it? LMD? Yeah. And so, how do we utilize the funds that we have? How do we utilize the goals that we're all going after? Shannon has connections through the SBDC that, Chris at the chamber, or Jennifer at the chamber did not, so how do we get those communications started? And it was, as Chris mentioned, it was a conversation that, instead of, hey, you're stepping on my feet or you're in my territory, it was, let's have these meetings quarterly, let's figure this out, because now's more important, than ever. So, that next meeting will be the second quarter, and so hopefully by then, those conversations that Shannon and Jennifer discussed, the ball will be moving on that. Another good idea or another goal is to establish a business plan competition for startups and entrepreneurs' businesses. So the committee thought, obviously we want new businesses, but we also want to support and retain existing businesses. So they want to have a competition, which hopefully will be funded by LMD money. This is something that would kick off later this year. Set up a competition, same thing, kind of like we talked about for the high schoolers, but how do we get these guys and gals that want to start a business but don't know about business plans, don't know about profit, and loss, don't know about marketing? How can we get them and utilize local funds, local knowledge to help them kick off? So that was really high on the EDAC committee's priority list, so that's going to be kicking off this year. And then lastly, highlight and organize potential commercial properties that are all empty, including the Walgreens, Pizza Hut, Centennial Mall, Spicy Basil, Golden Cavy, and the old courthouse. List can go on, right? So how do we get those properties out there outside of Craig and market those? And a big thing is that's going to happen on the website that we funded for the economic development website, which will be launched in the next 2 weeks, which is discovercraig.com. So that's gonna be a real asset for this EDAC committee. And then Shannon also went on to 2024 economic long-term goals in 2025. So I'll send this summary out to you guys so you can review. And other than that, the airport meeting that I have in April has been canceled, so that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. James.
I don't have any updates. My meetings are coming up next week. Are we all gonna be there for the charter review? Be able to have that one?
I believe so.
Cool.
I don't think I have, what day is it? Thursday?
Thursday.
The 30th?
No, next week.
The 6th?
Yeah. So it's at 11, but
Yes, as of now.
cool. I'll be there, but it doesn't do any good if we don't have one of the attorneys. At least, because I can talk a lot. But other than that, I'm good. I will say that I'll repeat this: if anybody wants to start making Moffat County its own state so that we can go back to governing ourselves, I'm on board. End comment.
Okay. Anything else? Cool.
51st state, Moffat County.
I think DC's ahead of us,
Wyoming,
trying to form their own state. I'm in the same boat as Mr. James. All my meetings are coming up.
You also want to break away from the state?
I know. It's been 4 years.
It's a difficult mechanism. You'd have to get a little bit more than Moffat County, I think. You'd have to have a little bit more of an economic.
Then the rest of the
We
state.
can figure it out because we could keep
Wyoming.
some of our industries that could.
You could do the 20 counties, exclude a few, but
I mean, we'll just see, who's coming with us.
yeah, that's true.
Start it that way.
Okay, glad we had that conversation. On to public comment number 1. Anybody who would like to come up and speak about anything of general provisions? Just for information, the next item will be the public hearing, and those will be specific to each of the items that we'll discuss. So if you have comments for the public hearing, try to reserve those for the public hearing, because if we could only take in information that is given to us during a public hearing for our consideration on those ordinances and conditional use. So just FYI. All right, come on up, Ken.
I want to do thank you for the people that have filled the potholes. Because when I turn in to go to my apartment, I'd have to slow way down to seek between the potholes, and there might be cars coming behind me. So the more potholes that can be filled, the better. And I work a lot along Highway 40 picking up trash, and they're working out there, and they should keep going because it's kind of bad. And I say thank you to the people that are doing it.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Lieberman. I live at 918 Cottonwood Ave and work locally at a locally owned business in Craig. I've lived in this community for about 4 years now, and it really is a wonderful community with small town vibes. I didn't grow up in Craig, but I can see how this town once thrived, and I commend you on keeping it a nice place to live. However, I have a huge concern. Earlier this month, I was evicted from my apartment where I lived at for about 9 months starting in May last year. We never missed rent, were respectful, quiet, and clean tenants. The company that bought our apartment complex in fall of last year has since mismanaged, harassed tenants, including myself. We had a sewage backup in our bathtub and dishwasher until about August. When they finally did plumbing repairs, they broke our range oven and they left our dishwasher in the kitchen full of sewage. My entire apartment was covered in cement dust and filth from the repairs being made to the plumbing and the floor, which I then had to clean up because the property manager wouldn't get anyone out to clean it. It was finally in mid-January of this year that the final repairs were made to our dishwasher and oven after I made a Facebook post asking if other tenants had issues. Man, did they. I will be happy to provide these reports to the council if desired. These tenants, both from Alpine Apartments on Tucker and Ridgeview Apartments, that commented and shared their issues with the new management company, but feared saying anything would lead to further harassment or eviction. One tenant at Alpine told me that the company wouldn't shovel the snow from the sidewalk as it was the tenant's responsibility, and only started clearing snow after a disabled tenant threatened legal action. On top of all this, I had to file a police report because the new owners provided me with a falsified, fraudulent lease where the lease terms and my initials had been changed and forged. I also went to the building inspector for the city, who basically told me he couldn't help unless more tenants reported issues. Everyone who rents from BRC at Alpine and Ridgeview are afraid to speak out. They are afraid of being discriminated against and evicted, and you, Mayor Hess, only reaffirm that fear for them. As the sitting mayor of the city of Craig, you represented this Denver-based company in court, and you fought alongside them against your own constituents to get me evicted. Mind you, I called your law firm to have you represent me prior to being hired by BRC, but was told you were too busy. And Ms. Cannon, please correct me if I'm wrong, but shouldn't you as the city attorney have instructed Mayor Hess against such business dealings during his term against his constituents? This is unethical, immoral, and you should be ashamed of yourself. If you want to practice law in this valley, go ahead, but not while pretending to be for the people you represent. You should resign immediately, Mayor Hess.
Any other comments? Good.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, no, you shouldn't resign. You're an awesome mayor. This is the first council in a long time, and I don't feel like I have to babysit all the time. Councilman Havorka, I'm very sad that you are leaving. Thank you for the time that you spent here, and you've done a great job. Thank you. My approval. Not that it matters, but. And I think that was it. I was really only here for the entertainment tonight, but
We got that.
getting,
Sean's singing later in the meeting.
oh, you're singing? Oh, yeah, well, I'll be,
Public comment number 2.
He's buying later.
and I have to comment separately on each public hearing thing, right?
Yeah, we'll have another one coming around.
Okay. And, yes, Paul, I'm with you.
Are you running?
No.
Why not? It's so great. I love every second of it.
That's why you'll run again.
Good.
Well, I'm Trina Towsley, and I've lived in this county and the town off and on for the last, I don't know, forever. I'm seconding what Ethan said, or at least I would like to hear some kind of comment, because that is a definite conflict of interest. It's corrupt. He went to the city inspector. He did nothing. Who does he answer to?
The city inspector does not work for council.
He doesn't work for the mayor?
No.
So who handles all that?
This is a city manager-led city. So the city manager does all administrative actions. I have no personnel control.
So you have no problem throwing your own constituents onto the street? That's what
I don't think this is the right venue to discuss what I do in my legal practice, because I cannot speak to what I do for clients, because it's a conflict.
Okay, okay. That's all I,
But I would warn people, you're not immune from defamation suits, so warn what you say at the mic.
Did you or did you not represent that company in?
Again, I can't say who I do and do not represent as an attorney.
Since when?
It's under the Code of Ethics.
But you represented them in court on public record.
I'm not here to discuss what I do for my clients.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I just figured maybe it was a little corrupt, but okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Foberg, I second what Ethan said. While it might not be illegal what you did, it is immoral and unethical. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, on to public hearings. First one is second reading of ordinance number 1141, ordinance amended in Title 1, Chapter 18010 of the Craig Municipal Code to include useful public service as a penalty for violation. I think this is our final passage, correct?
It is for section 7A and 7B. They're effectively the same language changes.
For the 9.4.
Correct.
All right, anybody want to speak to the useful public service provision of the charter, or the chapter correction of the code? Right, seeing none, we'll go on to B, Title 9, 94010 of the City Municipal Code to include useful public service as a penalty for violation of the Craig Municipal Code. Right, no public comment. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I missed the first one. You were talking too fast for my brain to.
They're both useful public service. You can talk to the first one.
And I just want to say that I am in favor of useful public service. I've been saying that for at least 18 years.
I did plenty in my youth. In favor.
Then you're in favor. Good.
Go ahead, Ken.
I will certainly second that because I had to do a little bit of duty like that. And now I think most of you know what I do as far as cleaning up around, because it put some ability into it, and I felt good doing it. And people that have worked with me doing the same sort of thing, I try and convey in them how good the work is that they're doing. And I don't talk about their punishment, as they would put it, because they begin to feel that they are finding something that they can do that is good. So I certainly second it.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on the useful public service? It's the old school community service. We just changed the name to useful public service about a decade ago.
Yeah.
What's that?
About a decade ago.
5-minute breather because I am uncomfortable right now.
Can if you want to.
I don't think I'm the one that needs it.
On to 7C.
Oh, so he's
so
going to
you
take a
just
breather.
gotta leave.
Duran will take his breather.
And again, at the beginning of the meeting, he said he was going to conflict off, so he's walking off. Consideration for approval of conditional use permit request from the Weiss to allow self-storage units to be constructed at 444 and 458 Mac Lane, AKA Monkim Business Park, Lot 1 less Lot 1A of Come and Go Store number 902, Lot 2.
All right, council, good evening. So Kurt Weiss owns Craig Storage, which is over there just east of this property, or just west of this property, excuse me. And it requires a conditional use in a C2 zone to have any kind of self-storage, mini storage, that sort of thing. So what I had him, you guys have the plat that he had Headwater Engineering do. This is just an initial layout. Basically, what we're looking at for this is if we believe the use is appropriate for that area based on surrounding properties, that sort of thing. If you guys choose to approve the use, then a full site plan would have to come before Planning and Zoning and City Council with details, drainage plan, all that sort of thing. To make sure that it still meets the land use code requirements and drainage requirements and that sort of thing, to make sure that it's not a detriment to the neighbors in that respect as far as drainage and everything. So anyhow, that's kind of where we're at as far as that goes. And you guys have the letters from the adjacent property owners there. From 435 and 445 Apple, and I believe they may be here too to speak when it comes time. And so, anyhow, that's the basic layout of what we have there, and so we can discuss more unless you need more information at this time.
No, I think we're good. We'll open up the public hearing for council's purposes. The code provision that talks about conditional use is 16.3.050, just in case you guys want to look at like the criteria we need to look at when approving conditional use.
And I believe I included that in the packet there too, so yeah, we can, oh, gotcha, okay.
All right, anybody want to speak to the conditional use of that particular property? Come forward. Go ahead.
I'm in favor of the approval of the conditional use permit for the storage units. We're going to need more storage. We don't have homes.
Thank you.
I don't feel that we have enough information about what is going to happen on that piece of property, either approve or disapprove. There are so many questions that I have. And I'm sorry I didn't make the first meeting. I was out of the state and couldn't get here. But you mentioned one of the things that really concerns me is drainage, because Edie's yard gets flooded every year. And they say, well, we might have a retention pond. Well, that brings up all kinds of other questions about insects and mosquitoes and smells and algae and all those sorts of issues. And I don't believe that a swale along, two sides of the property is adequate to address drainage from that size of a property. I'm concerned about if they're going to put asphalt down for driveways and through the storage units, that oil and other toxins can leak out of that asphalt and into the ground and into the water and into the retention pond, if that's what they decide to do. I'm concerned about that. There's, right now, Karen's and my dogs are getting out of the yard. In Karen's case, the storage units that are already there have pushed all the snow from their driveways up against her fence, and her dogs are just walking up and over, and they're right there at I-40. Well, someone moved the snow out at one point, and a few days later, someone pushed it all back where it was. And that's not a very neighborly thing, and she asked them about it, and nobody really addressed her concerns. Why did they have to push 8 feet of snow up against the fence? And trust me, I know that it's an unusual year for snow, but I think it's something that we need to talk about going forward. And they also, what was it, a few years ago, Edie or Karen, they broke your fence?
Oh, yeah, it's been several years ago.
Okay. And they were, piling snow, and they clipped the fence, and it was gone, as were her pets. So I really think that we need to address a lot of these things, and you need to give us more information. And one further thing, that little map that got sent out in the mail, it's not very complete. I mean, it's a pretty picture. It's nice to look at, but it doesn't really give us very much information to base a decision on. And I am wondering if we are going to get any more information before you guys vote yay or no, yay or nay.
I believe it's possible. This is public hearing. We won't take any action during public hearing, but that could be something that council does when it comes up for an action item. They may table it for further discussion or further items. That would be up to council when the issue becomes an action item.
A lot of waffle words in that statement.
Well,
makes me nervous.
So here's the thing is, I can't say what council will do, but that's a potential action that council can take, is they could table it, request more information, and continue on.
Are you on the council?
Yes,
You are the mayor, correct?
correct. But
So you are head of the council?
correct.
So why are you talking about the council as a third party?
Because I can't do it by myself.
I
Everybody up here has
understand that. I mean, you all have to, but to me, that would be a we situation, not the council.
Well, that's,
Excuse me, it's semantics. Oh, and I forgot, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Lynn Stevens, and I am fairly new to your community. I've only been here for 4 years, but I've lived in Colorado since 1988. So, and I've lived in very small communities before. So I think I'm fairly cognizant of the issues that small communities face. But like I said, I would like some assurances that we are going to get some more detailed information before this is dumped in our backyard, because that's where it's going, in our backyards. Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other public comments on 7C? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman. We're just here as interested parties. As most of you know, we just opened a storage facility here locally out in the county. We have had to break that into 2 phases in order to get that accomplished. We've completed phase 1. We have a planned phase 2. When we are complete, we'll be at 22,000 square feet. So we're just here to see how this would impact us. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to 7D, consideration or approval of conditional use request for Christy Framer for 519 West 7th Avenue, Craig, Colorado, to increase the maximum number of children from 6 to 9 as applicants in home childcare facility. And you can come back.
All right, so this one is just basically our zoning codes, and the residential medium density only allows up to 6 children for an in-home childcare. She's state licensed for 6. In order for her to increase to 9, she has to have zoning approval, which in turn is a conditional use in our land use code.
Thank you, sir. Anybody for public comment on this one? Go ahead, Vicki.
I am in favor
of approving this conditional use permit. Childcare is hard to find here. I don't have any, mine are all gone, but I hear that complaint a lot. So, yeah, and she has to jump through all the hoops of fire to get it increased by the state anyway. So conditional use permit, I think, is a good start for her.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also say that I am in favor of allowing the 9 children per child care provider. I was actually a realtor that was helping Miss Farmer look for commercial property. And as you can imagine, there's not a lot of commercial property in this area that is adequate to be used as a child care facility without having major improvements to be made. That being said, to create a larger daycare facility would be very difficult and very cost prohibitive. Not impossible, but in order to alleviate the burden on working moms, I would be in favor of allowing daycare providers to have up to 9 children as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing or hearing none, move out of public comment into other business. On to 8A, second reading of ordinance 1141, an ordinance amending Title I, Chapter 1.08.1.010 of the Craig Municipal Code to include useful public service as a penalty for violation of Craig Municipal Ordinance. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve second reading ordinance number 1141, 2023.
Second.
Take your second. So motion by Councilman Duran, seconded by Councilman Nichols. Any further discussion? All right, hearing
Get her
none.
done.
Get her done.
Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. On to 8B, amendment of 9.04.010 of the Craig Municipal Code to include useful public service as a penalty for violation of city code. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 1142, 2023.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Nichols, seconded by Councilman James. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. On to 8C. Consider approval of a conditional use permit request from Kurt Weiss to allow self-storage units to be constructed at 444 and 458 Mack Lane. This is an approval for a permit. They still have to come back with, even if we approve the permit, they still have to come back for a site plan approval. Is that correct, Marlon?
Correct. So I agree with what the lady said. I mean, we don't have as many details. Sometimes we bring these as to planning and council as a use to where if it was a flat out no and they were shot down, there was not a ton of engineering and fees and stuff for drainage and that sort of thing. There was considerable amount of snow on. And that sort of thing, so it'll be a little while before you can come up with a good, probably drainage plan here, if you guys choose to approve it. There is always that option to table anything until you get more information also. So, if he feels comfortable that it's going in the right direction, he might be willing to do that, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of why we have what we have there, currently as far as the site plan. We did find out there is it wasn't on the map, but there actually is storm sewer up Mack Lane all the way to Come and Go. So that gives us potentially, because drainage was my main concern, especially without having elevations on here, potentially I would say that there's a good chance it would need to be drained to storm drainage instead of trying to deal with it just on site. And then that way we can, if that's doable, then that would be something that would be on a site plan, though, whether or not there would be an engineer that would shoot in the elevations and the inverts and everything and see if that's even possible. That might not be, depending on the property. So, but that is a concern. So at that time, if you do approve this as a conditional use at the time of the site plan is when we would make sure that it met our landscaping requirements, any other type of requirements. You have some things in my memo there. Other things that vary from the code is the 50-foot blank wall requirement, which is in our code. Obviously, that's kind of hard to do with storage units. Self-storage units are actually a conditional use anywhere in city limits, even in an light industrial zone. And there's a good chance that's why you see them mostly in the county. You know what I mean? Just due to the lesser requirements and that sort of thing. But anyhow, yes, there will need to be considerably more detail. Some of that detail, if you choose, would need to be on there based on whatever requirements or conditions you put on this tonight. If you follow what planning and zoning says, then because there's no details, they state that we would need a buffer zone, that sort of thing, and have it aesthetically pleasing on the come and go side to kind of match the front facade. Those would be things that during the site plan you would have to see if those satisfy what you believe that those conditions were, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Or like I said, yeah, there is always a possibility of tabling it and bringing forth more information. So I don't know if you have any questions out of me. I believe Kurt Weiss is here also, and he can speak for anything on his behalf.
Yeah, let's take a motion so we can go into discussion. Anybody want to make a motion?
I think we need more detail.
Yeah.
I'm getting a gut feel that we need more detail.
Because you make a motion doesn't mean it's going to pass the vote.
Well, and that,
Yeah,
that-
but it
the
could.
motion that I want to,
I've seen that go south
Yeah.
a bunch.
I just want to ask a couple questions for.
and I guess that's
know
kind of where my
Can
head's at.
we can just move into discussion, right?
Yeah, we can go into discussion. Then.
Can
Yeah.
we
guys
do
can
that?
table the motion.
Yeah, I would make a motion to move to discussion on 7C.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilman James, seconded by Havorka. We'll just do by consensus. Anybody not in consent of going into discussion? All right, let's just go into discussion then.
I consent.
Perfect.
So I'll start out and ask a
Yep,
couple.
go for it.
So Marlon, can we, since we've identified that the current storage facility has created a drainage issue can we require as a condition of approval that he ties that drainage from that property into improving his improvements on this parcel?
Yeah, I mean, that can be a condition, it would have to be physically possible, you know what I mean? Once we get elevations and that sort of thing. So that's some of that additional detail that, you know what I mean, would have to kind of be hammered out to make sure gravity will regulate that as much as council will, you know what I mean? So, but yeah.
Especially if there's storm sewer on Mac Lane, that would be a whole lot easier to tie in, because we've identified that as a contributing factor to the Apple Street and
Yeah,
flooding.
even Trevor, our road and bridge director, said he was looking at trying to maybe take a pan across Woodbury Avenue there to try to divert some of that water 50-50, but you still have that water to deal with somehow, somewhere. So Peter actually mentioned that there after our planning and zoning meeting also, that we should look and see if there is any potential with this development to try to help with any of that, but we haven't gotten anything affirmative yet on whether or not that would be possible, other than just
And who currently owns this property?
currently Come and Go owns it.
And they're willing to do away with their overflow parking.
That's what I assume. So anyhow.
Well, that takes some of those big trucks off the street and
Sure.
parking in different parking lots, and I'm surprised they're willing to do that, especially
Right.
moving forward, so. And then I agree, once your final site plan, we can vote not to approve the final site plan. So if we're unhappy with, the motions and with following through what we suggest, so.
And I will say, if I thought it was going to be more of a kind of rubber stamp slam dunk, I would have probably had more, I would have required more on here to start with. I definitely, from a master plan standpoint, you could argue, being that close to Victory and the intersection, that there could be potentially better uses for that. However, it could sit there empty for decades also. You know what I mean? So that's why I wanted to see if the use would be a viable option there. And so, or typically I would have more on there even for a conditional use, you know, so.
What were some of the other concerns other than drainage? I know like property value was something that was brought up. I think we can manage that through aesthetics and landscaping and whatnot. I mean, right now, I think that lot's kind of an eyesore as it is, so I drove my Tacoma through there and almost bottomed out, so.
Right. So, obviously, the couple of letters from the people that live behind there had their claims as far as whether people were living in those from time to time. Kurt seems like he runs a pretty tight ship on most of his stuff. However, you know, it's managing stuff is always tough. So I don't know. Like I said, you heard most of the ladies there speak. Those seem to be the main concerns: snow storage, drainage, and that sort of thing was typically seemed to be the main concerns.
Yeah, and in the map that was presented, I don't think there wasn't really any designated snow storage, was there?
There's not really. We discussed, and like I said, Kirk can speak on his behalf more. We discussed on the building that's on the south west corner, most likely that building becoming shorter and something being done there, whether it's for snow storage, and that would also include the buffer zone is what the way planning and zoning was looking at it, as far as if we do anything, that's the place to do it, where we could create a landscaped and buffer zone and any kind of, like I said, storage, detention, that sort of thing. Whether detention pond's necessary, that I don't know. I do believe possibly some snow storage is, well.
Well, and if your storm drainage runs along Mac Lane, I mean, wouldn't you want the snow a little closer to Mac Lane?
Yeah, so depending on where they do the.
That's what I would think.
The whole lot currently, I'm not sure how much slopes toward that southwest corner. So that was, if we were having to control it on the property, that was
okay.
Made the most sense. He's, you know, just because I believe his goal is to keep level, since those two storage units will communicate with one another as far as ownership. He was wanting to keep it even at that end. However,
storm drainage information wasn't available for the P&Z meeting.
Correct. Nope.
Okay,
There's
then
no.
I think that, okay.
Nope. And so now sometimes even with, depending on how the inlets are sized and everything, sometimes you still do a little bit of retention depending on, usually it's on sites that are, you know, larger. There is a lot of hard surface being proposed on this site. So we do need, water's a biggie for sure. You know, it might be a decade before you realize how important it is until you get a, 2-hour gully washer, you know what I mean? And then, so whether or not inlets were put in the drive aisles and sent out to Mac Lane or whatever, that would be the first thing for him to try to get lined out and overcome, because I know that's one thing that staff won't recommend it to council or planning and zoning without a pretty substantial drainage, whether we feel comfortable with it. We're not hurting
He has
anything.
to retain 100% of the water, right? There can be no runoff.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep. So.
And the utility easement that runs around that, is that already an existing easement, or is that established in the site plan?
Those are existing easements. Yep, there's one that runs right down the center too. That's why he has the separated buildings there, and there's existing power poles there currently.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
I
Yep.
just have a quick question. What are the plans for lighting?
We don't have the site plan, so we wouldn't know about lighting yet.
Kurt, would you like?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, instead of talking about you, like,
let
you
the
know, in
man
the
have
third
a word.
person, why not have you approach the podium?
He does have a plan for that sort of thing, so he can describe what he's got planned there.
For the record, my name's Kurt Weiss, and
I'm the managing member of Craig Storage. To look at this and give you a little bit, lighting is the conversation now. We do strictly down lighting, LED stuff, probably it would be here, and here. So you get on one side of the aisle, and it's all down lighting. It's the old-time lighting that we see around town is YVA, that's upper lighting that lights a bigger area. So the lighting in the buildings, there'd be 110, 75 watt type light in each one. So the lighting is very minimal in comparison to something like Come and Go or for that matter, the subway as well.
You're saying no high,
Yeah.
tall pole lights?
All roof level.
The state of the art of what we do now is everything is on motion detector. Now, with the amount of deer you have in town, that might be a full-time lighting process, but what really happens is our security in units now is in cameras, and we'll maintain cameras on all these buildings, so we'll have the exits and the entrances. And then if one of you were to walk through the project, the lights would come on where you are for approximately 10 minutes or so.
And are you looking at controlled access? So is this going to be gated or is this going to be free access?
This is a little of both. The gate is just gonna be an open shut gate onto Mack Avenue because we don't have any security on the existing property now that you can come and go. Jared, that's why we do the camera operation. So we know who's there. We put high-end cameras at the entrance so we can pretty much see license plates. So that answers the lighting. The drainage, we might as well talk about lighting, because that seems to be the most contended. The lot runs from the northeast corner here down to the southwest corner. We're guessing, unfortunately, we've got snow still piled up from there, as we all do. So we've been unable to really survey it and get that, and that's why Marlon was kind enough to give us the opportunity to wait until we really had we could get in there and survey it correctly. The conversation to the neighbors are here, and so we just touched the corner. What are their names? Tears? Tears lot comes all the way down through to the corner there, and there's some vacant land in between that we have no real control over, which would be in here. So we touch it in one spot. We have existing conditions in Craig Storage, our current facility, that there is water that moves that was that way when we bought it years ago, and how we can redo that. However, we think we're talking about holding pond a little bit, or some sort of a area here to collect water. That typically is only for a day or a week at the very most. There was some conversation about mosquitoes or other types of pollution. That it'll be dry 99% of the time, but when we need it for runoff, that's obviously why we do that type of thing. From a standpoint of storage, we obviously need C2, needs a conditional use permit here. Our conversation is storage is typically something that doesn't get visited very often. The standard in the industry is people visit their storage unit every 90 days. So some people are there every day, some people aren't there for 3 years. Which would create about 400 to 450 visits to this a year. So it's not high volume, like Come and Go probably has 450 customers a day, I would guess. The bank has a considerable amount. We're very low impact in the relationship to visits. And people are usually there for no more than an hour or two at the very most, to load, unload, and then the doors are closed again. The other consideration was long walls. The wall particularly, we back up to a fence on the Teeter side, and on the other side, we back up to Come and Go by their fence there, if you're aware of that south exposure there. Then we're willing to break that wall up, probably with 2 different colors, and then maybe something that looks good, put some, I say fake windows, but look like windows down through, do some things to make that look nice. Our goal in the complexes that we own is to maintain them well. We have 3 things. They need to be dry, we need to have service, and security. And if we can't provide that for people, then we're out of business. I think most of you know we own several other complexes in the community. Northwest Storage being the old 84 lumber out to the west end is one that we've developed over time, put the landscaping in and so on, which we think most of our stuff is well maintained. Bulldog Storage across from the fire station is a building we cleaned up and took care of, put an elevator in, stuff. The fencing is another issue that I'd like to address. It seems like chain link fence with barbed wire on it is a state of the art in Craig. And that's not the state of the art with us. Going back to security cameras, we would put do we have a picture of that, Marlon, of the fence proposal? It's just a black wrought iron fence that would be like 54 inches up with a landscaping. And
I don't know if I got a fence picture from you, Kurt.
Right there.
Oh, that.
This is just a picture, but this is what that would look like. We're not, the setting value is to Max Street, but we do most of our landscaping there and fence and driveway. This gate would just be an open shut gate. We'd probably shut it at night and leave it open during the day. So people can get there. Our main concern is we would have a runway from Max Street over to the next street, and we get a lot of customers, so there aren't our customers that drive through there. We're not noisy, lighting is minimal. I guess the only thing that I don't have a good answer to is drainage at this point. It was brought up that Max Street now has some drainage, but everything runs the other way at this point, and I don't have any thought process of whether to make that happen or not. The buildings themselves, so storage buildings typically are a double hung roof which drain out both sides. And our buildings, the north building, can we go back to the site plan or building? So we can use this, I guess. So this is probably the best example. This is our debarcade project in Steamboat Springs. It's in the county. Each one of these buildings is a shed roof. This particularly runs to the south, so the snow that drains off melts and or most of it's all melted and then just drains out. The one to the north here drops off to the back, and so there's nothing that goes on the blacktop, so there's not a lot of drainage. That's what we would be doing this. Our north building to Come and Go would be a shed to there where we put a facade on the front of the building to make it not look like a metal building. The center building would drain to the south side, and then we would put a square or a facade in the front. Stuff that you've seen so far is very minimal, if I agree. And then the south building would drain to the south. For snow, we put snow stops on roofs now. We use standing seam roofs. And after this winter, you're gonna need standing seam roofs forever, it looks like. I never thought I'd haul snow in Craig, Colorado. So that's what we're doing there, so we're not putting a lot of water, except for the center building, onto asphalt in this project. So, I guess that's it. If you got questions?
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned cameras. So your original, you want to call that Craig Storage one, let's say, does that have cameras in that complex?
Yes.
So the claim has been made that people have been living in the units. Would you be able to detect that?
Absolutely. We have only heard that in the planning. We have cameras that are there. I mean, the neighbors are more than welcome to give us a call, because we do not allow people to stay. You can check with your police department how many times we have issues that we're trying to resolve, people going over fences or whatever with all our cameras. Of our 6 complexes here in town, 5 of them are cameras.
And are they monitored, the cameras, or just there for, they are monitored?
The answer to that is no, they're not. They're there. We do drive-through property checks usually either every day or every 3 days. And we monitor the cameras in the morning. In other words, we go through, and if we see anything unusual, that doesn't mean we catch everything by any means. Understand, but we try to be good Samaritans in that area, so.
You can get pretty high-tech security systems now to where it'll give you a notification if something happens when it shouldn't be. I know a little bit about that.
So we'll already do that with motion detectors.
Yeah.
So guess what? You're on the property, lights come on, cameras, you're on camera.
Yeah.
So that's what goes on there.
And from my point of view, I think that's something that should be in the conditional use for storage units, because there's such a high crime point, just like we do with some other businesses, to require certain coverage of
Which business?
cameras. Well,
Certain ones.
I would say in the last 2
High
years, we've
risk.
probably had hundreds of storage unit bergs in the Craig and Moffett area. And it's not the owner's fault, but what happens is those units get broke into. We usually find out because you said the owners don't come in till once every 90 days. And by the time there's a discovery of the crime occurring, most of that video is either wiped away, or some of the older storage units have such old camera technology that it's such pixelated cameras. It's in the middle of the night. They don't have IR technology, so you just can't solve them with cameras. So, I mean, that's something for consideration from a point of the storage units have always historically in Craig been frequent. Lots of crimes happen as far as people breaking in and stealing stuff. They're
And
high target.
technology's come a long way since '07 when this code was adopted, you know. So
Right.
There'd be some language in there, like I said, especially for, and everything in Craig, inside city limits would be a conditional use for,
I mean,
Something
I'm
for
still
consideration.
not in favor of forcing anybody to do that. If they want to have a higher risk of crimes being committed on their property and then deal with those consequences, then that's up to them and the people who are keeping their property there. You know what I mean? I think that it's good business sense, but should we mandate that?
Well, I think since it abuts partially a residential area, I think there's need for it there. You don't want to put a draw that would bring people more to that residential.
Right, but I mean, you just said they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So to address that conversation just a tad, number one, we've already talked about the cameras. Police department knows pretty much who is doing what in most of these storage break-ins. I mean, and their hands are tied to a lot of this. They're in jail, they get booked, and they're out, and they're gone again, and they're the same people. The second thing is the new state of art of locks on units. You you now take your cell phone and touch it, and so unless somebody is going to really vandalize and with a hammer, we can't help that. But in the past, one of the issues that you two are talking about is you can go down and cut locks, and the people that are really doing that can set the lock so it looks like it hasn't ever been cut, so it is harder to check on. But
Yeah, one of the
the new
largest.
state of the art that we're looking at, or we're not looking at, we're actually installing it in Steamville right now, is you'll be able to get in and out of your unit with a cell phone to lock and unlock, and it'll be monitored, and if somebody's on that, we'll see that in the office, so.
Because I want to say one of the largest storage unit Bergs, they actually had a unit, and they just peeled the walls back and crawled through the entire building. I mean,
We're guilty, we've had that happen too.
they just happen. So
It's- Locks are for honest people.
that's after picking a number of
More
locks.
questions to me, I'm happy to answer whatever.
Any questions for him?
I mean, my honest only concern is that I don't want drainage in these ladies' yards. That's the biggest thing. I don't want this to be something where we have to revisit this after this is built and we go through a winter and then it's like, well, we talked about this and we had these parameters. Other than that, man, I'm probably different than most of this. I know that if you're starting a new business, you're going to want to make it look good. You know what I mean? I'm not real worried about the actual landscaping and how it looks because, once again, if you're wanting to have a successful business, you're already going to want it to look good. But what my concern is I don't want to see, property damage done. That's really it. I mean, so as long as we can get that straightened out, and I'm sure that'll come in a site plan. I think grilling you over every single minor detail is probably not the best use of anyone's time here. So, as long as you assure us with the drainage, we get that in a site plan. I'm content with that.
And that's my concern is also the drainage. I want to, now that we have that new information of the storm drainage on Mac Lane, whether that needs to go back to P&Z or whether we do that through the site plan, that's whatever. Yeah. Here or there.
I don't know, it's kind of a personal aside, but the 3 properties that are off the corner of the storage or the lot, that's Edie, Karen, and myself, we're all widows and we're older ladies. So we live alone. So security is kind of a concern for us. And I'm wondering if it would be cost prohibitive to put an electronic gate so that there is some control of access to the property. And just, give each unit, I mean, I've rented storage units for years and years, and you put in a passcode and the gate opens and you come in and you put in the passcode, you go out. It's not, I don't know how expensive that is.
To answer that, it's probably fairly prohibited in this location because of existing conditions. The west end at Cook Chevrolet along that side, our whole project is open, so people can come and go. The security that we would look at is just this open and shut gate. Because of existing, and the cameras and the lights coming on. The Northwest Storage, for example, we have a gate security. We know when people are there, when they're out, unless they go over the fence, of course, or someplace else. Same thing at DeRose Storage. We have an automatic gate there, but it just doesn't work here for that part. The security there would be keep that Mac Lane gate either closed all the time. People really don't have to leave from that side. It's going to be more of a fire department emergency access scenario than it is going to be security. So we could keep that closed, and frankly, I'm not opposed to putting some sort of a camera to that back corner. I mean,
we're happy to be good neighbors here. I mean, that's what we want to do is monitor our property from exactly what you two guys are talking about.
What item is this?
All right, we,
I'm ready for a motion.
yeah, does anybody want to make an action item motion?
An action item?
Yeah, because we made a motion to discuss, but I don't think nobody's moved to actually do something with
Approve or
8C.
So I mean,
motion.
and we're gonna do this again with the site plan.
Right, we're gonna have the same discussion.
That's my biggest thing. We have the final approval once we see the final site plan and the issues, if they can address the drainage or not in a reasonable and at a reasonable cost to the developer, because I'm sure you could address the drainage, it's at what cost? So,
So yeah, I see it kind of as three options, either deny it or approve it with whatever conditions you feel appropriate and make sure those conditions are met on the site plan. I don't know, as far as Kurt's end, how comfortable he is either way, just purchasing the property, because obviously if the drainage doesn't work out, you know, obviously it's not going to work out for him either. Or yeah, require more information, which sounds like mainly is the drainage, and revisit it for the actual conditional use. Either way, he's got to have that drainage piece before anything will be approved. So I don't know what you guys are the most comfortable with, if that makes
we're
sense.
making a motion to
We're just
take action on this?
Yeah. So we're
So
either
moved.
gonna
I'm making a motion to take this from discussion back to an action item, or is that what we're procedure?
So one of the,
we don't have to do that.
well, one of the things we have to consider is, are we going to adopt in the conditional use permit the recommendations by P and Z or any
Plus
further
we add
recommendations?
our own, yeah.
So
That's what a motion would entail from.
yeah, so as it stands, it would just be the approval. I don't think the way the agenda item is written, it doesn't include P and Z's amendments.
So I can add those during my motion for approval.
Right.
Okay.
That's because that was their recommendation to us, was to approve it with the following conditions.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think any business that buys this, you're gonna be dealing with the same thing. Like, are we gonna restrict anyone from ever building there? I mean, and I think it's gonna be better in the end, because you're not gonna have, right now, they pile up, you see the size of the snow hill that's there right now currently.
Biggest one in town.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, if
Yeah.
you have things there, you're not gonna have as much snow. You're
Well,
not
that's the
gonna
thing.
have-
If somebody's actively owning and
Yeah.
using that property, they're gonna want to take better
It's
care
gonna
of it
get
than
better.
than it has been right now.
Yeah, I just think, so.
So I'm ready to make a motion if somebody.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
I'm making a motion to approve the conditional use for Kurt Weiss at 444 and 458 Mac Lane with the following conditions. Number 1 through 3 of the zoning and planning recommendations that were presented. And number 4, because they already addressed drainage in their plan, I would like their drainage plan to include Craig, the original Craig storage lot, if feasible, to pull some of that water into, to be able to handle the majority of that water as well.
All right, anybody want a second?
Second.
All right, motion is to adopt the conditional use with 1 through 3 from P and Z's recommendations, and to address the drainage issues onto Mac. That pretty good statement of your motion, Chris? All right, any further discussion on that motion?
Sorry, yes.
Okay.
So is that, Chris, when you say that, is that including the detention pond?
I think the
that a ret-
drainage
supposed to be a
plan will
retention
determine
pond?
if we have a retention pond, right?
Yeah, and I believe probably if a motion just stated that drainage plan have to meet, you know, city and state requirements and approved by staff, and then we'll,
Okay, so,
you know,
but
decide
we're
how
not
that works.
forcing a pond into this.
Not forcing, no. I mean, it would be, you know, it might not make the most sense. It would be,
Potential detention pond, yeah.
So we just amend it with that.
I will amend my motion to eliminate the detention pond based on the drainage plan
Second.
Second. All right. Any further discussion on the amended?
No, I think we've run this to the ground.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Derek, you back up here.
Hey, buddy.
Let's go to an easy one.
Kurt, this is
forgot
better
you
than
were up
Steamboat,
here.
I know. Kurt, this is better than Steamboat,
been a
I
while
know
for
for
me.
sure. I said, this is better than Steamboat, I know for sure.
Look, guys, I'd like to thank you. We're about to break ground in Steamboat, and it's been a year and a half
Yeah.
getting through the process.
And only
Wonder what
took
the
us,
difference
I
is.
appreciate how you guys do things over here, and I've been here for quite a while doing things with you, and I appreciate that. Doing it.
Well, I appreciate anyone who wants to come in here and start an honest business.
So you're calling me honest? Thank you.
So far, I haven't gotten to know you too well yet.
All right, on to 8D, conditional use permit, Christy Framer for 590 West 7th Avenue, Craig, Colorado, to increase maximum number of children from 6 to 9. I think anybody else have any introductory questions on this? Or
So, did we get any neighbors' comment or on the existing daycare?
No, that was going to be my only closing comment here is we've sent letters out to everybody within 150 feet of the property boundaries and posted it in the newspaper for the required time, and no comments one way or another, so.
And also, planning and zoning didn't have any conditions to it. They recommended to approve, and that passed 3-0 at that.
And, right. And in the past, we have put time limits on conditional use where they'd have to come and get reapproved. But based on section 5 here, just for your guys' information, based on section 5, it says a conditional use permit may be revocable, may be granted for a limited time, but it's not or subject to conditions, but it's not necessary. It can be just a permanent conditional use.
Like if they lose their license, then
If something happens and there's 40 children over there, then we can, you know what I mean? If it doesn't fit what they've got approved for, but otherwise they don't have to come back and reapply for a conditional use. It just, as long as it keeps being used for what we approve it for, or you guys approve it for, so.
cool.
I make a motion to approve the conditional use of 590 7th Avenue West for from 6 to 9 children in the daycare facility, based on the fact that we had no objections from the neighbors or surrounding properties.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilman Nichols, seconded by Councilman Jackson. Any further discussion?
I just want to ask Chris if he has a fever because we've been agreeing a lot tonight.
Oh, that's 2 meetings in a row, Paul.
That's actually been like this year.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's been a theme.
I
Any
don't know.
further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. On to 8, resolution number 8, 2023, a resolution approving the formation and operation of Useful Public Service Program.
So this is just the resolution that would allow us to commence the program that we have made the changes to the code for. It follows the statute, which effectively requires any government run useful public service program be as self-sufficient as possible. So it notes that we're able to charge a fee of up to $120. I think what we've landed on right now is $50 for anything under 16 hours of public service, and then it would be $100 for 16 hours and above.
What does supervision mean? Who can supervise?
So I think the plan right now is that the CSOs will supervise. I think the ultimate plan is that the seasonal CSOs will be doing a lot of supervision during summer months. So obviously, we're hoping to recoup or contribute to some of those costs of their employment as well.
I was trying to get a job for Ken.
Well, he can apply. I think that they're always looking.
No. Yeah, okay.
He likes to do the work.
Any further questions on resolution number 8? I would entertain a motion on number 8.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 8, 2023.
Second.
Gonna give it to Derek. So motion by Councilman
it's that
James, seconded
out.
by Councilman Duran. You guys were like dead on together.
Whatever moves it on.
Any further discussion on resolution number 8? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. So one of the things that didn't get put on the agenda before we get into staff reports was giving staff direction on how to advertise your opening.
I don't think we approved that in the agenda, so we got to move on.
Yeah.
No.
Well, one of the things we have to do is think about what kind of direction for the next meeting, either a consensus on direction towards Peter, whether we want to post that now or wait until the next meeting. So
Wait for the vacancy? Is that what you're talking about?
I think you
honestly
post
wasn't
it.
paying attention to the first half of what you said.
we have to give direction on when they want to advertise or how they're going to post it or how we're going to.
I kept
Well,
up
what they're
pretty good.
posting for. So I think we set precedents in past that we advertise for letters of interest.
Right.
And why wait? I think we posted.
Agreed.
Yeah, although we might wait for Peter to get back in the room before.
I can tell him.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. You got it?
I got it.
No, and I agree from going through that process. I thought it was a pretty thorough process and there's
So thorough.
ample time for people to get their
Yeah, we
letter in
take
for
the-
those that wanted to.
That's at least, no.
So we'll see what the interest is.
And
This is the fifth one.
Tough shoes to fill.
so, and based on the new ordinance from the last charter revision, that term only goes till November.
Right.
So
And that should be in the posting for a term to.
Can I just get 2 votes?
What?
Like we just don't appoint anybody and then I just
run with
Oh, God.
it still wouldn't balance out
that's
You'd
true.
still lose every time.
every time.
Right. Remember we took out the provision where it didn't go to general and we have to force the vote?
Yeah.
So, okay, we can give that direction to Peter on,
Cool. Yeah, we better get that started.
right, because we have some meetings coming up where we have some other absent individuals, so, having a full council, like, we started the first of the year too short and it was getting kind of shady on some agendas. So, on to number 10, public comment number 2. Vicky, Ken,
Everybody left.
go ahead.
Feel the love.
I wish I could leave.
It's probably a good thing they left, because I'm going to try to be polite when I say this. I'll refrain from using the language that I would prefer to use. Mayor Hess, I'm very sorry that you were treated with such disrespect tonight by 2 different groups of people that I think came from their total lack of understanding of policy and procedure, because they don't pay any attention ever to what is going on in Craig and how our government and these meetings are run. And so I just want to say again, I think you are doing a great job, and you just let that roll right off of you, and I thought that was very commendable. I was about ready to jump up. Let's go. So thank you.
I think there was a school board member in attendance that was appreciative of me getting chewed out, so.
Not an easy job.
Luckily,
Why was Heather hat? No.
luckily, my prior job, I used to get shot at, so until someone can top that, I'm good.
Don't.
Hey. I've been stabbed at, shot at, spit at, so I don't think much can hurt me anymore. So,
Give them any ideas.
hey, if it's your day to go, it's your day to go. On to staff reports, finance department.
Actual.
again.
This actual.
Ended on a happy note, Katie.
We are.
So,
We also
did the
believe
year-end
Facebook-
report at the last meeting. Not a whole lot to report through February. I mean, a lot of the activity that comes in the first couple months, a lot of it even goes back to the prior year. So the February report is a little light. 2 months are about 17% through the year. 7% of the 2023 budget has been spent. 13% of the O&M budget has been spent. Most departments are currently at or under budget for the year. Some departments are currently running lower when compared to the previous year. Now, this year, variances that are going to be occurring through all departments are still in employer benefits, but we're going to see the opposite effect of what we saw last year. And that's just with the change in health insurance from last year. We used some of that medical benefits fund to offset the increase in cost. So you'll see an uptick in that this year because we just got back to that normalized level. So just be expecting that in the future months' reports. In individual departments, in council, 12% expended year to date. Expenditures look quite a bit lower compared to last year, but there was an invoice that I found doing this report that was paid in 2022 that I'm going to need to reclass to this year. It was for the CML dues, so it was put into 2022, but I need to move that into 2023. So that'll be corrected next month. Let's see here. Judicial expenditures are about 3,500 higher compared to last year, and that's just due to allocation changes in the payroll staffing in that department. It used to be the staffing was allocated to a couple departments, and now she's 100% allocated to judicial, and we made changes with some of the other staffing allocations. Public Works is lower compared to prior year, and that's just relating to an overlap in staffing that we had at the beginning of last year due to the retirement of the previous engineer and IT person that was there. What else is exciting here? I'm losing you guys, I can tell. I mean, the audience, there's so many people here.
It's all exciting, right?
We could
So, I mean, utilities are up in, all departments. You're going to see that trend. Power, gas, they're all up consistently. Fuel is up. We have some increases in repair and maintenance for both Senator Craig and Yampa building due to some roof leaks.
On the fuel, I know a while back we talked about potential hedging, locking in a fee for that the year. Did we end up doing that? Or?
So I do think that Trevor did that. And it's high in the February for the road and bridge fuel for gasoline, but we've gotten two big shipments, so it's not all the expenses there, but it's not been utilized yet. So I think that that'll really level out as we go on through a few months. I think we have a big inventory of it. What's that?
You don't give them credit for what's in the tank for what's used?
No, we don't adjust that monthly. We do an adjustment for that at year end, but we don't do it on a monthly basis.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure they went through extra anyway with plowing.
Yes,
so, right.
It has been very heavy for that.
Yeah, so, cool.
On to revenues, not a whole lot of action there yet. Property taxes will start coming in March through July. Sales tax, we're still seeing an increase over prior year, both in county sales tax and city sales tax. City sales tax were about 91,000 increase from prior year, attributed to inflation mostly. Licenses and permits, pretty even, about a 3,200 increase from prior year. Grants, intergovernmental revenue, not a lot of action there yet. We will see a lot start happening with that in April and May once we do the first quarterly reporting. And then as the year goes on. Not much in charges for services yet, summer activities mostly. Interest is, that's notable. So that's coming in at 4.7% and 4.8% for Colotrust and CSafe. So already this year, we've had 183,000 allocated across the funds. So that's really significant when you're looking at what we were looking at last
year.
January and
It was almost
February.
like negative.
Yeah, it almost was, so.
That's fun.
I guess the offset of inflation. I don't-
Yeah, something.
Something, so. Does anybody have any questions on the report for February?
Nope. No questions.
Mayor, I'd like to make a closing remark if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
So the first gentleman that came up tonight talking about Alpine Apartments, some of these places are, I'm kind of at my wit's end to know what to do exactly. He came in and said that some other people he knew in that apartment had had some issues, and I said, well, have as many as they can get a hold of me. In order for me to address an issue that's in a certain apartment, I have to have access into the apartment, which means I have to have, they have to willingly let me in there. So I had one person call from Alpine Apartments based on that, and he gave me a laundry list of some things that were not great, maybe not immediate death traps, but still not, there are things I could enforce under my property maintenance code. By the time we got done talking, he didn't feel comfortable. I said, well, arrange a time, call Sierra, whatever, let me, I can do a site visit and then I can do a property maintenance report, correction notice on what I find. By the time we were off the phone, he didn't really feel comfortable doing that because they do feel like they're going to get evicted if they do that. But I don't have any way of doing it anonymously when it's for apartment 318. You know what I mean? I'm addressing some right now at Remington Village. One was the roof part, almost roof collapse, but then on one part of it, but then the others is the exterior stairs because I can see them from a public right of way, and then you go, hey, this is a death trap. So, but on inside apartments, unless they let me in there, and when they let me in there, then I give them a notice that says, hey, the tenant let me in and I found this, then they feel like they're going to get evicted, which does happen a lot of times. And so if it doesn't seem like it's something that's an absolute, oh my gosh, this could start a fire, you could die tonight type of thing, I somewhat leave it up to them because I can't go force my way in. If I get to their door and they decide, no, we don't want to let you in, I can't do that without an administrative warrant. So that's kind of where that one came from on those apartments. So just figured I'd let you know that's kind of what we're up against sometimes is people do feel like they're going to be evicted. And so then even though they call, they go, well, I'll call you back if I decide I want you to come do it. And then you don't hear back from them a lot of times. So. But the right of entry thing is always, as the mayor and Heather knows, is always a finicky thing, so.
Well, and if they're evicted for reporting something, then that's a huge lawsuit.
It's against the law. You can't evict.
And I know it's illegal, and I think they count on and I don't know if that's always the case. A lot of times it's people that are behind on rent, and they're just trying to get out of their lease. That's 50% of my calls. I go to somewhere and they're just really trying to nitpick something to get out of their lease. And those I don't always field that much because they're small, minor things that I go, we just can't really, you know what I mean? But, and I know it's illegal. I think there are landlords though that just plan on you not having the resources to do anything about it to some degree also. But
Well, that's another bill in the legislature, just cause evictions. So, any other further discussion on anything? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.
Oh, shoot, I thought we'd go